Yeah, and I do love the foundational knowledge that you get. I mean, that's what we've based our entire YouTube channel off of, right? Like the fact that we feel comfortable enough to understand the space. And I know what I love about it is just this like thirst for knowledge that it's brought up in me that this is a space that's always changing. And I feel like I have the language to keep up with the change.
Yeah, you're not just reading the headlines, you understand the fundamentals.
Yeah.
Just yeah, that's I think the best part of learning. I mean, someone who's gotten multiple degrees, it's by learning the fundamentals. Once you understand it, then you can build on top of it. Like that's what I think the AI advantage that we touch on here and there is. AI is definitely a force multiplier, but you need to understand the fundamentals first. And I'm only saying this because yes, I was speaking to students as a guest speaker at the university that I work at because yeah, I was trying to emphasize to them that yes, AI is a cool tool, but by understanding the fundamentals, you can get so much more out of it. If you know how to ask questions the right way, to understand what it's doing behind the scenes.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back for another episode. And today, Zach and I were thinking, it's the end of the year. Probably people are thinking about what comes next, especially with 2026 right around the corner. And some of you might be thinking, maybe it's time for me to go back to school, especially in this economy. I know I was thinking that a couple years ago. So was Zach. So we want to talk a little bit about our experience at NYU Stern and NYU Stern's MSBAi program. And for those of you who are watching us for the first time, welcome to Everyday Data. We're your hosts, Patricia and Zach. And on this show, we like to talk about all things data, analytics, and AI, and how that intersects with your everyday lives. Like I mentioned, we're recent grads of the MSBAi program at NYU Stern, and also data and pop culture enthusiasts. So why don't we get started? Today, we're going to talk a little bit about our experience in the program. And I know Zach is very popular on LinkedIn and is always getting asked questions. So we thought we would create a video of some of the questions he gets asked. So Zach, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, so it's funny that you mentioned why we're doing this on video, and the reason why I get asked these questions is because of a video. So yes, I on my one of my other channels, I just was thinking of video ideas, talked about the program. So people find that video and they ask me a lot of times the same questions. And on the video, they also find me because Patricia, too, you remember this. We were both in the promo video for
Yeah.
the NYU MSBAi program. So they've seen our name on a couple spots and they tend to reach out. And I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. So I never mind. And yeah, the questions, a lot of times they do repeat. And it's people just wanting, of course, to get that firsthand experience, firsthand feedback of what was it like doing a master's. How did you choose this program over others? Was it worth it? So that's what, yeah, Patricia and I just really wanted to share that experience from both our angles instead of it just being me. They get all these questions because Patricia's got a great perspective and her own story to tell. So yeah, let's talk about, I think from the top, the most common question I get it's just a general, they might read the website. So you watching this yourself, you might have seen the website and said, oh, NYU, they offer a program in business analytics and AI. But what's this thing about blended formats? How is the program itself? And does it work for me? And I'll kick this off and send it over to Tisha in a second. But in a nutshell, it's a blended format, meaning it's hybrid. And that's what drew me to it is the fact that it's not a full-time commitment, which was really important for myself at the time when I was going through it. So it is a modular structure. So it's sort of like mini semesters, if you remember back to your regular college days, where you are hybrid in the sense that you do some of the work before class, and then you are in class for an entire week in person, learning with your peers. And then after that 1 week, usually in New York City at the NYU campus, then you're back home working on like the homework from the teachers and the assignments. So it's a 1 week of instruction. So you are committing to in-person instruction, but it's very flexible because, well, not flexible in the sense that, yes, it is on a schedule, but it is only that 1 week. So it's only about 6 or 7 weeks through the entire year. So that's the broad overview. And the Patricia, yeah. So I think I know the answer, but that was a very attractive selling point to the program for you too, right?
Oh, yeah. And I remember and why I'm so glad that we're doing this video is before I even started the program, I knew that I wanted something part-time. Like I there was no way I could take time off work to study anything full-time, but I still wanted a rigorous program that was well respected. So I also ended up messaging a lot of alumni on LinkedIn, and I ended up having so many phone calls with alumni from not only like NYU, but schools in Canada as well. And the alumni and their stories were a big part of the selling point for me. But a lot of what they said was literally because of the flexibility of the program. But the thing with flexibility that I think is important to mention is it doesn't necessarily equal ease. Because I think that, we think like, oh, it's flexible. I can do the coursework whenever I have available time or, I can make it fit into my schedule. And I found that it was the opposite that happened for me. I had to rearrange my entire life schedule to make sure I could get my coursework done in a timely manner and that I
Mm,
could also dedicate the required time needed to actually learn the information, synthesize it and get it through. So it's not you don't really fit the program into your life, you end up rearranging your life to fit the program. But,
yes.
it's a different kind of view of flexibility,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and it reminds me a lot of my own circumstance of rearranging my life. Just to talk a bit about my own past and how that you mentioned you had to rearrange your life for the program. I guess because I was a fresh quote unquote graduate at the time, I had gotten my second bachelor's degree, which was an online computer science degree in 2018 and graduated in 2020, of course, in the pandemic. So starting the program, we started in 23. We're the class of 24. So it was only a couple years. So for me, I guess it felt a little bit familiar to kind of ease into that lifestyle, I guess you could call it, of doing the homework on every weekend versus, yeah, like the free will life. So I wanted to question, throw it right back at you was, yeah, what was the gap between like when you finished your schooling and when you started the program? Like how long outside of school were you?
Oh, it had been a while actually because I finished
Mhm.
my undergrad in 2014.
Okay.
And during the pandemic, like 2020, I did a 1 year postgrad cert, which was online.
Hmm.
But for the cert, like that was a very flexible. I didn't have to change my life, like
Yeah.
it was just a little bit of upskilling because I was trying to actually figure out, okay, what's the next step that I want to take? Like, do I want to do an MBA or do I want to do a master's? Do I even want to go back to school? So I was like, you know what? Instead of like making such a big investment, let me just go do a postgrad cert.
Mhm.
And so that was 2020. But yeah, so it had been a while for me when I was like really seriously studying. And that too, like when I was in my undergrad, I went to, you know, a fun school. So yeah, it's not like I spent all 4 years grinding. Like I spent maybe like the last couple of years.
No, but it was a good point, and I think that's why it's good to have both a perspective. Because for me, yeah, I'm obviously older, so the first time I went to school, the gap between my first bachelor's and my second bachelor's was okay, yeah, it was a while. It was like 15, 16 years.
Yeah.
So I got kind of trained, I guess, on frequently in school. And then yes, we were coming out of the pandemic, so what we were like a little bit. And on that note, that's what the point about the pandemic, and we both mentioned that is that's one of the reasons why I was really strongly wanting in-person experience because there were so many programs. You sound like you were in one too. So I was coming off a online bachelor's where, yeah, we had an active Slack community. We, studied up together. We did homework together. We had group chats, group study sessions because computer science is freaking hard when you do algorithms and stuff. So we had that virtual camaraderie, but not in person. That's one thing that really drew me to the program when we were talking earlier about the program structure is having that once a 1 week a semester quote unquote to actually meet other people in person. And now we've gone through the program, I definitely felt that where we had that online virtual community where yes, we did homework together, we studied together, we attended virtual calls with the professor before the class, but it was really that in-person experience which made it, I feel like, almost not the single thing that made it worthwhile, but it made definitely like enhanced the experience for me.
I totally agree. And like the way that we had in person too, I thought that we were all really thoughtful about actually making time to spend time together, hang out together. Like I will say that I feel like our cohort was very special. And I think that we also went that like took that extra step to genuinely foster connection and you get to know each other and spend time with each other. And so that also really helped. But I agree with you because, like, I did a postgrad cert before and it was fully online, and we didn't even
Mhm.
do any of the virtual study sessions. We had
Oh,
like WhatsApp groups, and that was
okay.
it. And so it was kind of an isolating experience. And that is the one thing that I'm really glad is that I did wait until we could, because we were fully in person when we did our in person sessions.
Mhm.
And we didn't have to mask or anything like that, and so it was just so nice to be able to be with each other and hang out, and yeah, and it was great because the program was so intense, and we were all so, like, overwhelmed all the time, and so I feel like, it's one of those, like, misery loves company moments where we
Yeah.
bonded.
Trauma bonding, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. But so that brings up a question that I do get asked a lot. So I'm gonna pivot a little bit slightly in this, which is people ask me, what was your cohort like? Because you mentioned, Patricia, that we had an awesome cohort. And of course, obviously I'm biased, but I'm gonna 100% agree. I thought our cohort was the best. We had such a cool group. And but people ask me, because it is cohort based, you're in a group and you're with them through the entire year, through thick or thin, as you're trauma bonding over these assignments and essays and technical projects. But people ask me a lot, what was our cohort like? And our cohort was, correct me if I'm wrong, 42, right? Or
Yeah,
no,
I think we were 42.
42. Yeah. So 42 people in our cohort. And it was interesting because it was a mix of all nationalities for one thing, and also all skill levels.
Yeah.
Which again, people ask me, and this is maybe we'll follow up after this: is what kind of profile do people look for? The program a good fit for? But to talk about our cohort specifically, which yes, is here on our yearbook. Yes, so our cohort was a mix of a bunch of different countries. So like myself, I'm based in the New York area, but there were only I think 6 of us that were actually in New York near within commuting distance of NYU. So everyone else was about 50-50 international and domestic with a couple what I'm doing extended domestic with you up in Canada. You're not that far, but yeah, so there were a couple Canadians, but a couple across the US, and then we did have yes, international from like South Africa, from Thailand, right, from Korea,
Singapore, Korea,
Singapore,
Japan,
yeah,
India.
Japan, yeah, everywhere. So it was a mix of India, so yeah, like a mix of like everywhere, and a mix of abilities, not abilities. I'm thinking like video games, skills, I guess, skill
Yeah.
sets, because some of us had technical experience and some of us didn't, and I think that mix of and also experiences in the workforce. Some were like fairly recent grads, and other people were my age or even older. Like I
Yeah.
wasn't the oldest person in the team in the cohort. So yeah, what was I guess your impression of our cohort and the mix of people?
I mean, and you and I both talked about this because we're both in the promo video
Yeah.
for the program. But I appreciated that mix so much. And I mentioned this during our video on like whether you should even consider going back to school or like getting a master's in general. But what I really appreciated about our cohort was that there was a good amount of people that had decent work experience.
Mhm.
I don't know. I think that the requirements have changed for entry to the program. I don't know if they still need the 5 years of work experience, but I really appreciated that there were so many individuals that had good work experience because I was in a position where, I'm trying to advance in my career and I really wanted to have conversations at almost like an executive level. Like and I feel like a lot of us were at that level where we're either decision makers, leaders. And so the conversations were so rich because of that reason. And so, from my perspective, I think that this is a really good program for those who are sort of ready to take that next step, level up in their career. And because the content is really good and the change that that you learn about, like the way that individuals or companies have used analytics, have used machine learning to really make change in their companies I just don't think that when you're so early in your career, you can apply it in the same way that
Yeah.
I think maybe some of us who were a little bit more senior have hopefully been able to apply in our companies. Like, I think I've made some great strides, and I really hope that other folks have as well. Um, so that was kind of like I really appreciated that we were a more experienced cohort, and I would definitely encourage this program for people who are of a similar experience level, I think.
Yeah, that's again a question people ask me. I think I'm leading off everything with the question people ask me because yes, people ask me all the questions. Is yeah, who's the ideal candidate? And I think an interesting thing, who's is best for because there is an interview process. So if you haven't read that part of the website, it's not freely admitted. You do have to kind of prove yourself that you fit. It's not as not as rigorous as the Stern's full time MBA, which you need a lot of credentials for, but there is a selection process. They are selective in their candidates. And I think it's also interesting to mention that when I was considering this program, the fact that it's through Stern, which links up to what you just mentioned, that this is more a program about making informed decisions about
Mhm.
analytics at a company level. So it's very similar to an MBA where it's all about strategy, but this kind of takes that strategy piece, but also gives you the knowledge and the understanding of the fundamentals of analytics and AI. So it's not just here's how to read the graph. It's what the model is actually doing so you understand so that you can make an informed decision, you can make an informed recommendation, right, to executives. So I think it's an interesting mix though that it's business but with the technical side, but it is kind of a business first like you mentioned.
I Yeah, 100%. And I think what I really appreciated from the program is that as opposed to like let's you're not as much like maybe pitching ideas, but you're able
Yeah.
to evaluate things that are being
Yeah.
pitched to you. And obviously I haven't had my MBA, so I'm not sure what the MBA experience is, but based on just, who I see when I'm interviewing individuals or in the
Mhm.
workplace, like I think when you're sort of a newer grad or if you're going through MBA programs, you kind of learn about like the basics of business and how to create that great deck, put together a proposal, et cetera, et cetera. And I think what I took away from this program is okay, now I'm the decision maker on the other side. What are the kind of questions I need to ask? Like, how are the ways that I can try to evaluate ROI on projects, or how can I try and figure out the real problem that's at hand? Like, it felt like it took that kind of knowledge, that kind of business knowledge to the next level and then gives you technical skills. I mean, I do think it's important to caveat that you're not going to be a data scientist after
Yeah.
you graduate this program. It's like and I think that's kind of the tough part, like, if you go in thinking that you're gonna completely change your career, I don't know that it's necessarily going to do that unless you're kind of already in that trajectory or company's already willing to invest in you that way, but I do think that it definitely gives you the knowledge to be able to, like, evaluate and understand
Mhm.
conversations.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Is it kind of leads into what I was thinking is outcome opportunities that you mentioned that this is not a program to make you a data scientist. And when I was evaluating programs, I was also similar to you maybe. I was weighing, do I want an MBA or do I want to go technical? Or is there something that's kind of that hybrid of the
Yeah.
two, which obviously is the MSBA program? Because yes, I've seen MBAs. My wife has an MBA and then her PhD, but so I know her MBA friends. I worked with MBAs when I was in consulting, and it's a different kind of work, and especially it's freely out there. Like NYU Stern's MBA results, the results for someone that gets their MBA, like from Stern, which is a top tier MBA program, you're going to go into management consulting or banking. And for me, that wasn't the outcome I necessarily wanted. I didn't want to put all the work in, which is, yeah, they're both a lot of work, not discrediting MBAs. It's still a lot of work. But I didn't really want to go back into consulting and do, strategy consulting, or I didn't want to do, investment banking. That wasn't the outcome I was looking for. But at the same time, like you just mentioned, I didn't wanna go super technical, so,
Yeah.
like, I enjoyed so I'm this program for me, like, who's it for? And I thought it fit me perfectly because it's someone who enjoys that both worlds, right? Like, a little bit of business, but also technical, and I think it did a great job of bridging the gap and also connecting the 2 and why one, how they work together, I guess is the way to say it, that the business needs the data needs the business context, and it is like an interplay between both sides of technical and business.
And I think what also sets this program apart a little bit, or what I really appreciated about it, maybe I didn't appreciate it as much going through the program, but I appreciated it afterwards, is the capstone that you're doing too. Because I think
Yeah.
like we've talked a lot about like, yeah, you know, you're getting the business with the technical, and there's a lot of knowledge that you're gaining, but from
Mhm.
an application perspective, what I liked is that because the capstone is happening in tandem as the coursework the entire year, you're always applying what you're learning in real time.
Yeah.
I don't
So
know if
go
you felt the same way.
Yeah, well, just go into the capstone, I guess. Like, if you've never heard of the capstone, what is it? Like, a capstone, am I just writing a paper? So, what is the capstone process, Patricia?
Yeah, so it's basically a project that you're doing. I think like
Mhm.
when we think of programs, like you're usually thinking like, okay, you're going to be defending a thesis at the end of
Yeah.
the year, right? So I think here instead of a thesis, you have a capstone project, and that is where, at least for this program, you get into a group of individuals, different strengths, different areas that you're looking to improve in, and then you work on a project together. So it's up to you to collect your own data set. Obviously, you have a mentor, an advisor, who's one of the professors at the program, and then you are working on a question like, what do you'll have your hypotheses, maybe you'll run models, but like as you go through the program and as you progress through different knowledge areas and levels of understanding, you also apply that to your project. So for example, like we worked with a not-for-profit organization that's in Canada, that's very well known, Girl Guides of Canada, my group, and we helped them. We were almost like consultants for them, helping them just analyze some of their data and understand a little bit more of what what the Canadian landscape looks like for girl guiding. And so, you know, we as you learn more about what analytics can do, what we did for the organization grew as well. And then at the end of the year, at the end of the program, you present your findings, you write a huge paper, and you present your findings to your classmates and to there's some like previous alumni that come in as, I wouldn't say judges, like capstone reviewers, and you
Yeah.
present in front of them. You know, they ask you a couple questions about your project, and then you're done. It's great. I think it's a really great way to apply the all of the learning from class.
Yeah, and the fact that you mentioned that it's a business problem, and that's what they really emphasize, and I think everyone, definitely in our cohort, did that. Is that they really the program directors? When I say they, I'm talking about the program directors at the MSBAi. They want you to work on a real world problem. So that's why, do you have access to data set from your company, or someone else in the group? So there was 42 of us, right? So everyone split into groups of 4 or 5 or 6-ish. So there were what, like 7 or 8, right? Like
Yeah,
capstone teams.
yeah,
And everyone, so out of, like hopefully whatever cohort you're in, there's 8 people with access to some kind of data. Some people I think did do one group, the Chargers was a public data set, right? It was like
yeah,
just government data. But most people chose data like for companies they worked for. So if they had some kind of project, and like you mentioned for Girl Guides, it was you were like consultants. So you're working on a real world problem. The directors, they encourage you to, involve those stakeholders like in the real world, if you've never done like a data project, but involve them, work on it like a real business project, a real data project, but with the support of everyone else in your team. And yeah, you have a faculty advisor that works at Stern that's advising you throughout the process to think about the problem, how to come up with solutions. And yeah, as you mentioned, apply everything we're learning in this segmented. So we pitched in what, module one we pitched, or
yeah.
module or two, right? One, I think,
Y
right? We were
I
off
think
the
with
bat,
module
I think.
1, you just got into your groups. Like,
Yeah.
you kind of pitched, because I know, like, whatever I pitched, we was not the project that we
Yeah.
worked on. But, I think module 1, you create your groups, so it's really important because you barely know these people,
Yeah.
and you're, like, basically agreeing to be in a group with them for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
And I know I really lucked out with my group, like, I had a great group, and so you I would say, like, people get really close really quickly, and they're just like, "Yeah, we should get it," get in a group, but I would say, like, making sure that your goals are aligned will make
Yeah,
you a
like,
little bit more
we all did, like, it was a board where you wrote down your strengths, right?
yeah,
Like you said, like, "Oh, are you good at, like, technical? Do you have a knowledge of presenting or
yeah,
writing or program management?" So, we did it wasn't, like, total, like, randomness, right? Like, there's a method, they've been doing this for 10 years now, over 10
yeah.
years now, so, yeah, it is processized now, but yeah. Yeah, and then after the capstone, yeah, we presented it, and it's something. One of the benefits I saw was it's some, because it's a real world problem. It's something I can talk about in interviews. Speaking of LinkedIn, yes, it's on my LinkedIn because yeah, it's not just a school project or like for myself who's done a computer science degree, like in the CS tech world, there's so many tutorials. They're just the same data sets, right? It's like doing the Titanic data set, right? Everyone knows that data set is not unique and there's no business outcomes to that. But by working on a real world problem, it's something you can talk about and show experience with, which is, of course, what employers, especially now, 2025, 26, they want to see, have you actually touch real data, not just Kaggle data sets, right?
Yeah, and I think if, individuals are considering the program, and if there's anyone watching this that is already in the program, one thing I would say about the capstone and the data set that you put together is to try and get data over a couple years. Like, I think that was all something that maybe we didn't like, I know we didn't prioritize that in our group, and I think there were a couple others that kind of used, like, 1 year of
Yeah.
data or maybe like, we had, like, kinda limited data sets, but I think the one thing that I would encourage is if anyone's thinking about this, think about, like, finding a data set that goes over a couple of years.
Did you have a chance to, talk with, about your capstone to, potential interviews or your current position or anything just to
Yeah,
discuss people?
I've
Yeah.
definitely brought in I haven't really like, I mean, I didn't really talk about it as much in work,
Okay.
but I was able to talk about the work that I did with Girl Guides to pitch projects at my
Okay.
company.
Yeah.
Um and so that was great. That was with my old boss who left over the summer. So now I'm trying to figure out like what life holds for me. But yeah, I mean, I've definitely been able to talk about the work that I've done, and it's great. Like maybe not so much at work, but I find like I'll go to like conferences and things like that too, and being able to talk about it there makes a really big difference.
Yeah, yeah. It just adds some more richness to, yeah, your overall resume. And that's why I think in general, maybe to like zoom out now, like was this a good decision? Did you get good value? Which again is a question people always ask. Was it worth it? I'm making this commitment not just on monetary but time, right? It's opportunity cost. It's a year of your life, and as we were mentioning or alluding to, it's a very intense year. I mean, there was late nights, deadlines, rearranging your life. It's still flexible that yes, we had a life outside of work, or work plus school, but it is a lot of time to it. So, would you do it again? I'll answer first real quick, and I would say yes. I'm a big proponent of just lifelong learning, so I think it's something that yes, it's expensive. Yes, it was a year, but it was only a year, right? Like, so I could do it in a year. I knew going into it that's something I wanted. I wanted to just, hunker down and do it for a year versus other programs that are more spread out over like 2 years. But, just, nose to the grindstone for a year. And it's something that's going to stick with me. Like you mentioned, that you can continue talking about the capstone, my experience in it, and everything else that kind of you went through and the friends you met along the way, right?
So wholesome. I agree. I mean, I would do it too.
Yeah.
I for so many reasons. Like I had a great experience. I learned a lot. I mean, my background, so my undergrad degree is in communication studies and psychology. So it was such a big stretch for me to go from I have a very like artsy mindset, and to go from that to something that's so technical. So for me, it was a really big learning curve, but I would totally do it again. It was a really challenging program. Like it's not an easy program. It's super rigorous. And but I think that that was good for me. And I felt
Mhm.
like at the end of it, when we were at graduation, I was like, yeah, I did it. Like, I'm her, like I was just like,
Yeah.
it's so satisfying to get to the finish line and also feel like you did well. And that's why I always say, like, I've had a couple calls and I always tell everyone, I'm like, listen, this is a rigorous program. You have to dedicate yourself to it. And it will be so worth it when you do dedicate yourself to it. So I would totally do it again.
Yeah. So I want to jump on a point you mentioned and maybe like segue to another section, which usually when people reach out to me, they're considering applying or about to apply, and they always have a question of, yeah, your story is great. Mine is kind of semi opposite. So it's a good thing to talk about is what is what kind of baseline knowledge do I need going into the program? People ask me, oh, do I need to take, even so if you're watching this and you've already got accepted, do I need to take like primer courses or anything else? That's a common question. Myself, I had a technical background and I think that definitely helped, but it did stretch because I'd never done statistics or modeling. I understood the Python courses, but I still learned a ton in all the other courses. And you, Patricia, yeah, you're a communications major. And this is a STEM designated degree. So what was that experience like for you as a non-STEM person going into a technical degree?
Can I just say, like, I cried for sure so many times going through, especially when we were doing like statistics. I was a mess. But that being said, I spent time like studying. Like, I really, really studied to try and learn all of these topics. And I will say, with the coding side of things, I did do a couple courses beforehand on just Udemy. Um, and I think that really helped me. I knew that we were going to cover R and Python. I spent a bit more time on R because I heard that the program is a bit more R heavy. And so I'm glad I did that because then we ended up doing our capstone in R. And so I just ended up becoming so comfortable with it because I was already doing it for 3 months beforehand. That being said, I think I would definitely suggest people to also do courses in like Python and
Yeah.
SQL because I did say spend so much time in R and at work, all we do is talk about SQL and Python.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. That Python and R. So for someone like myself who knew Python, knew Java beforehand, so R was new to me. But as you know now, Patricia, they're not that different, right? Like if you know the basics of programming, so
Yeah.
that's why I tell people that ask me. I think if you know the basics, and in this day and age, Python is far and away the best way to learn the basics, but learn the basics of variables and loops and things like that, and you're going to be golden. It's just a little bit of syntax. But I 100% agree that and hopefully they're slowly changing that because my feedback was definitely like, let's push for more Python because, yeah, I have not touched R since the program. I do everything in Python. There's usually a package to run the same stats stuff. Like I was running regressions earlier this week in Python on SPSS data because there's a package for it. Yeah.
Yeah. I do not do that because all my skills, all my comfort is in R. So like one of my big goals is I've gotten so much more comfortable with SQL, but I definitely need to become more comfortable with Python. If there's any feedback I would give to the program, it's the same thing. But I know that in academic circles, I feel like R is more
Yeah.
popular. So I think that's why they kind of focus on that. But, you know, it depends on what people like. But yeah, definitely still because I think in the program you only spend like one in the in-person days, you only spend 1 day on SQL and like maybe one, I don't even know, do you do a day of Python? I can't remember. But I
Was
think
it
it's like
half day
one
or a
day of
full day?
each
Yeah.
versus you spend a lot more time learning R, is
Yeah.
what I felt.
But on the bright side, for anyone watching this in 2025, when we were in the program, ChatGPT was brand new. So I
Yeah.
think the people nowadays have an unfair advantage, and that's why I want to segue a little bit about the structure and AI in general. So this is bring this back to AI, which yes, so it's in the name of the program now. The program has added more AI courses, but what I enjoyed and when I reflect on, was this worth it? I think the fact that we learned so many of the fundamentals of AI before it was cool, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
So the program itself, it is started again, this is a 10-year, 11, 12-year old program now. So it started in as like a more data science machine learning before data science and machine learning were cool. So all the professors have extensive knowledge. Yes, maybe a little bit old school because they didn't R, but they understand the fundamentals of these algorithms, these techniques, and how they apply to business. And one of my favorite parts of the program was just the professors in general. Yeah, yes, of course, I love the students, and I think our cohort was the bomb. But the professors all had real world experience, working with companies, doing machine learning, data science projects at real, Fortune companies, solving big problems, and then passing that knowledge and the learnings they got, through an academic lens, but also through that corporate business lens of what are companies actually, getting value from with these projects, how to think about projects in terms of business value and apply like frameworks that you learn for data science and analytics.
Yeah. I thought that our professors were amazing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, like, what else there is to
What
say.
else to say, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
like, I mean,
yeah,
because this is my thing. I think that when you think about a topic like, AI, data science, machine learning, like, there are honestly so many schools you can go to.
uh,
Really, when you think about these topics, there are so many schools you can go to. They cover basically the same thing. Like, you're not gonna go to one school that's gonna teach you some new magical topic in data science that another school doesn't even know exists.
yeah,
Um, but I think what sets up part our program was these amazing professors that are doing very interesting things and that are considered experts in the field that other schools are wanting to have come as like guest speakers and that are
yeah,
going to conferences and that are on the news. Like, I think that these are really just high caliber individuals. And yeah, and I do love the foundational knowledge that you get. I mean, that's what we've based our entire YouTube channel off of,
yeah,
right? Like the fact that we feel comfortable enough to understand the space. And I know what I love about it is just this like thirst for knowledge that it's brought up
mhm,
in me that this is a space that's always changing, and I feel like I have the language to keep up with the change.
yeah. You're not just reading the headlines; you understand the fundamentals,
Yeah.
and just yeah, that's I think the best part of learning. I mean, someone who's gotten multiple degrees, it's the by learning the fundamentals. Once you understand it, then you can build on top of it. Like that's what I think the AI advantage that we touch on here and there is AI is definitely a force multiplier, but you need to understand the fundamentals first. And I'm only saying this because, yes, I was speaking to students as a guest speaker at the university that I work at. Because, yeah, I was trying to emphasize to them that, yes, AI is a cool tool, but by understanding the fundamentals, you can get so much more out of it. If you know how to ask questions the right way, to understand what it's doing behind the scenes, and then you can frame those questions intelligently and, yeah, like do everything.
Yeah.
But okay, to pivot back to NYU, which gets I want to get lost on the actual topic, even though I'm going in this AI rabbit hole. But the NYU advantage, this is like we're not shilling for NYU. NYU are happy to sponsor us. I'd be more than happy to take some sponsor dollars. But I think the
Send me a
NYU advantage
sweatshirt.
is, yeah,
I
where's
need a
some
new
merch? Yeah,
sweatshirt.
where
Yeah.
do our merch?
I've gone up a
Yeah,
size, so I need a new
I
sweatshirt.
should have worn that as my quarter zip, right?
Oh yeah.
Have you ever this opportunity? Why was I thinking? But anyways, the NYU advantage. That's one thing people ask me all as well is why NYU, right? Like, and you mentioned that world class professors. That was 100%. So NYU is a brand, and I emphasize that as well. I was having this conversation with a potential candidate recently over yes LinkedIn DMs. So they slid into my DMs. That sounds bad, but anyways, type with somebody on DMs. But they were considering two different programs, like you mentioned, Tisha. So one versus the other. And is it worth paying the NYU kind of premium? So NYU commands an expensive cost. There are other programs you can find out there that are way cheaper to get a degree. But my kind of, as I was like formulating a response of why, what has more value, this smaller name school or NYU? So a good one I found that was very similar was University of Virginia. So this is maybe Patricia might have me know, but yes, Virginia is a state. Yes, but they're, as you know, they're not a huge name. So regionally, they might be good, in that area. But NYU, and how I framed it to them because they were an international student, is that NYU has an international brand for a reason. As we mentioned, world class professors, instruction, proven techniques. But I think the brand aspect and the resume boost of NYU or obviously like another like top 10 business school versus a slightly cheaper, similar time commitment school can't be understated. I think it's especially in like myself in the New York region, or if you're international. While regional schools are definitely have an advantage, like the University of Virginia, nothing against University of Virginia. If you live in the area, I'm sure it's a great school. But
Zach's coming
someone
for
in
Virginia today.
but someone in like in New York or in California is probably not going to know that name at first glance unless they're alumni themselves. But if you tell them like UCLA, you know, NYU, those are names that have good brands and strong reputations in the marketplace for a reason, right? Like they've proven themselves as schools that produce can as we can attest to through rigorous programs.
Oh yeah.
It has that reputation.
Oh yeah. I mean, every time I look at my bank account, I'm always like, why did I do this? I have no money. But then when every time I tell someone that I'm graduated or did my master's from NYU, just kind of seeing the light in their eyes, I'm like, that's addicting.
Yeah, so I think there is value to choosing a program. So to give a unbiased opinion, I also tell people to consider your region. So if you're looking to stay in my obviously example is California because Silicon Valley is huge. So NYU is a global brand, so people in California will know it. But if you're planning to work in Silicon Valley, it may be better to go to a school that's more regionally known that people recruit from like a UC Berkeley, UCLA, the big schools that are near these recruiting agents, near the companies you want to work for. Whereas NYU, obviously NYC is a global financial hub, so it does have its own tech scene. It's got media, it's got finance, so plenty of also other opportunities here on the East Coast. But especially if you're international, which a lot of our students are, and NYU is not just a regional, like East Coast versus West Coast in the US thing. NYU is a global brand. They have global campuses, which was, yes, one of the cool things we did was have a week of classes in NYU Abu Dhabi, and, travel around. But they have these satellite campuses. It's a globally recognized brand. And for global companies, people know the NYU name.
Yeah, and I mean that alumni network is also great,
Yeah.
right? So to be able to tap into that is worth it. That being said, I do think that this program is very expensive, and I do think that's an important consideration for
Yeah.
individuals too. Like the way the program is priced now, I wonder if I would have a different like thought because I'm paying in CAD, which is
Yeah. At the
not as
moment,
strong.
yeah. Yeah.
So I definitely I feel like now I would almost take pause because it's definitely a pricier program. So that's something to think about too, is if you're willing to kind of commit to that, or definitely try and get funding from your organization if you're currently
Mhm.
employed. It's really worth it. And it's important to note that like you're not eligible for scholarships from the university itself. So you definitely want to try and find funding somewhere.
Yeah, and that you mentioned the NYU, the alumni network, and I think that's definitely a strength. Yes, NYU is a huge school. It's one of the largest schools, so strong alumni network. But also, one interesting thing that I didn't really, I guess I should have probably looked into this more. But you have a lot of alumni benefits. So while you're in school, you are a regular, classified like a regular quote unquote NYU student. So you get all the perks of being an NYU student if you're in the area or during the week you're on campus. So you have access to all the facilities. You can you can use the gym, you can go to the library, you can do everything an NYU student would do. So especially advantageous, yeah, if you live in the New York area because you can stay at the library anytime. You can use the gym. You can go to any event that's for students. You just show your ID. But then the post graduation benefits, yeah. So you do get access to lifelong career coaching, which I thought was pretty cool. And then the alumni network, just running into people and having that shared experience of NYU, very active alumni community. I feel anyone I meet that's NYU alumni, you automatically like, yeah, yeah, exactly,
I
yeah,
see you. I see you.
you shared trauma, whatever their program was, but it wasn't MSBA, but you went through it together and you have something in common, so which is a huge benefit, I think.
Yeah, and speaking of coaching, we both had such a great career coach through NYU that just like really helped me. I know she really helped me with kind of putting together my resume, also having just conversations with my boss about what comes next. And then when I graduated, I ended up getting a promotion. And so just like so happy with the experience of that mentorship that she was able to provide. Like, yeah, 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
Shout out to my girl, Erica.
And speaking of, it was just funny you mentioned that because yes, earlier this week, as I mentioned, I was doing a presentation to students, and I brought up a book that Erica recommended to me to read, and I was recommending to students, even though they're current students.
Is it
So
Design Your Life?
I should have, but no, was recommending Switchers.
Oh,
Did
yeah,
she
I
actually
love
read that?
pictures. Yeah,
Just to give a book summary, which yes, we're avid. Both of us are avid readers, but Switchers, it kind of frames your career of how you can transition from either industry or domain. So, like if you're a marketing analyst for a hospital, you could also do that same marketing analyst at a consumer goods company because it's the same job function. You're just learning healthcare, now you're learning consumer goods. Or you can transition within domain. So, if you work in healthcare as marketing, you could probably work in healthcare in finance. Maybe that's a stretch, but you know the domain already, so healthcare as the domains. You have acronyms, you have that business knowledge. You're just changing functions within that. And why I was recommending this to students is because our school, we have a lot of students that they work while they're going to school, like just like we did. So they're trying to. Maybe you are watching this, but you're trying to transition out of one career. So maybe you're in retail, or you work in a restaurant, but what skills are transferable to entry level careers? And that's why I was framing this career conversation, which I thought was great. And again, tying this back to get off this tangent was back to shout out to the NYU Career Center because it was so, I had not heard of it, even though I read a ton of books. And yes, Designing Your Life is another huge favorite, but Erica gave, such great advice that was perfectly suited for me. And yeah, I'm still using it and doing takeaways from our sessions that I applied to my own life and these frameworks that we learned.
okay, so we've covered who the program is for. We talked about Capstone. We've talked about the professors, the like sort of like student experience, like amenities, the people in the cohort. Is there anything that we haven't covered yet?
I think that's those are kind of the basic questions that
Yeah.
people ask that are not super specific. Everything else will be maybe tailored, but I will just maybe throw this back out to the viewer. I mean, I know I'm open to it. I'm sure you are, Patricia, too. But
Yes.
contact us either through a comment on the video or LinkedIn. We're both, I think, open networkers on LinkedIn. So feel free
100%.
to search either of us on LinkedIn and we can continue the conversation, one on one. Again, this is, I think, the example. I mean, we're the poster children for this, but the example of the alumni network that I'm always willing to help out. You mentioned at the top of this discussion how you reached out to alumni, right? Like when you were considering the program, and they were really receptive, right?
They were
Everyone you talked to,
amazing. Yeah.
yeah. And that I think sold the program to me too, is that when I was reaching out to current and past alumni, everyone was so receptive. Like I didn't get shot down of like, oh no, I'm too busy. Everyone made time. As long as I mentioned, hey, I'm considering the NYU program, can you just talk to me a bit? They all made time for me. It's that really strong, like pride in the school and wanting to help out, the next generation.
Yeah, and like, you would think for a school like NYU with the reputation that it has, like you might be nervous about the type of people that you're meeting. I thought that the people that I would end up talking to might be like just like I don't know, like maybe not as friendly or
Yeah.
be like these are the expectations. You have if you're not a person like this, you're not getting into the program. But it was just so opposite of that. Like
Yeah.
there were other schools that I spoke to alumni there and there's just a different vibe to them versus the vibe of the alumni at NYU. Like it was just like all these people really feel like dynamic and special and that's what sold me in the end. So yeah, so not to, brag, but I think we are also like that, so if
Yeah.
anyone wants to reach out to us, they totally can.
Great. So I think we'll end there. I think it's a good note to end on that. Yeah, we're open to connecting and continuing that giving back as alumni of the NYU MSBAi program, the Masters of Science in Business Analytics and AI. So thanks for sharing, Patricia. This is a great discussion to, talk a bit about one of our shared experiences and our shared love and passion for what we went through together
Yeah.
as co-leads, co-class reps of the class of 24.
2024.
Yeah, class of 2024 MSBA.
What a ride. I don't think we
Yeah,
can call ourselves recent grads anymore.
yeah, I know. As the years roll on. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe we'll have to change up our intro. But yeah, reach out to us. Hopefully we hear from you folks.
All right. And we'll sign off here and see you in the next episode. Bye, everyone.
Bye.